It was one of those quiet family evenings, the kind that feels cozy, safe, and familiar. My father was in his armchair, laughing softly at something on the TV. My mom was on her phone, casually scrolling through her messages. We had our little routines, our small but comforting habits. I'd always thought they were my perfect family. But then, in the tiniest ways, things started changing. As I grew older, I noticed my father's gaze lingering a little too long. Small things at first. A compliment that felt off, a hand on my shoulder that held just a second too long. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was nothing. But the feeling wouldn't go away. The first shift one evening, when my mom was out of town on a business trip, my dad and I decided to watch a movie. He'd always been protective of me, but that night his protectiveness seemed different. I remember sitting there laughing at some scene when I felt him looking at me. Not like a father looks at his daughter. I shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. "You're so much like your mother," he said, his voice soft, his gaze intense. I felt my skin prickle. There was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read, and a part of me wanted to get up, to go to my room and end the conversation. But I didn't. Maybe I was too shocked. Or maybe I just couldn't believe that this was actually happening. The night seemed to stretch on, like time itself was holding its breath. My father leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. "You know, sometimes I feel a connection with you I can't explain. It's like I'm drawn to you in a way that I can't resist." His words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I couldn't process it. I wanted to run, to hide, but I was frozen. He kept talking, as if saying these things would somehow make them true. "It's something rare, something special, what we have," he murmured, his voice both gentle and unsettling. My heart raced, and I tried to pull my hand away as he held it tighter. I felt trapped, my mind spinning with confusion and fear. This was my father, the man who had raised me, protected me. And now he was saying things that twisted every memory I had of him. I didn't know what to say. My words caught in my throat, suffocated by the weight of his confession. The twist: my mother walks in. Then, as if in a dream, I heard the front door open. My mother's voice called out, cheerful and unsuspecting. My heart jumped. I felt a flood of relief mixed with terror. She entered the room, and her smile faded as she took in the scene before her. What's going on here?" she asked, her eyes flicking between my father and me. My father released my hand, stepping back quickly. He tried to explain, his voice filled with nervous laughter. "Oh, it's nothing. We were just talking. I was just telling her how much she means to me." But I could see it in her eyes, the same dread, the same suspicion. She looked at him, then at me, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind, piecing together the fragments of unease that had been lurking in our family. She took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving his. "What exactly were you telling her?" There was a long, tense silence. My father struggled to find words, but none of his excuses could hide the truth that had filled the room. The confrontation, a family torn apart, intense, heartbreaking. My mother's face twisted with a mix of horror and betrayal as the truth became clear. "Is this what I think it is?" she whispered, her voice trembling. My father tried to brush it off, claiming that he was simply showing his affection, that it was a misunderstanding. But his words were empty now. My mother's gaze grew colder, her fury barely contained. You betrayed us all," she said, her voice cracking, her body shaking with rage. "I trusted you. We both trusted you." I felt tears prick my eyes, my whole world crumbling as I watched them. My father's eyes shifted, looking at the floor, unable to meet my mother's gaze. And I knew in that moment that whatever trust we'd had was shattered beyond repair. Aftermath: a broken home, reflective, somber. That night, my mother packed her things, barely able to look at my father. The man she'd loved, the man I'd trusted, had torn our family apart in a single horrifying moment. I sat in my room, numb, listening to the sounds of her hurried packing, my father's quiet attempts to stop her. As she left, she turned to me, her face softened, filled with pain but also resolve. She reached out, pulling me into a hug, whispering, "This isn't your fault. Don't let this break you." When the door finally closed behind her, I felt the silence descend like a weight pressing down on me. I was alone with him, the man who was once my hero, and now, he was a stranger. Resolution: thought-provoking, open-ended. In the days that followed, our home felt hollow, empty. I couldn't look at my father without feeling a surge of betrayal, anger, and sadness. He tried to apologize, to explain himself,